Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 765B, and today's date is September 14th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The End Game is Near, U.S. Pushing Propaganda to Start World War III. Let's get right into the economic collapse geopolitical news. And we can see at this point that this country right now is becoming a fascistic-based country. It's no more capitalism. There's no democracy. It's all gone. I mean, if we go back to the 18th century, where these men would ride up to a coach of aristocrats, and they would sit there and say, "Stand and deliver," and these aristocrats would hand over their purses, and these people then would ride away. Basically, they were just robbed. Today, we have law enforcement doing this, but they made it legal. How did they do this? Well, with the civil asset forfeiture rule. The legal justification for such highway robbery is the police practice of civil forfeiture, which has been on the books for decades. Civil forfeiture allows the law enforcement to seize property, including cash, cars, homes, without having to prove the owner's guilt of a crime. What? I mean, think about what we're saying here. They don't have to prove the guilt of a crime, and they can take your property. In many cases, drivers are not charged with any crime at all. Not even a traffic citation. Typically, police stop a car, make the usual request to see license and registration. If the driver asks why he was stopped, a vague explanation may be offered by the officer, or he may simply ignore the question, then demand a search of the car or the driver's person. The officer then seizes cash and other valuables as potential evidence of a crime, and they usually use drugs as the common accusation. In some cases, police threaten drivers that if they are not cooperative, their children may be taken by Child Protective Services. And then what happens is the burden of proof is on the driver. Wow, this is going back to the Revolutionary War in the British times. Because here in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty, but they reversed it. How do you prove that you didn't have drugs? Think about that for a second. It's nearly impossible. So it's impossible to do, so these people never get their property back. I mean, we're looking at the government, the smaller governments, riding up to the side of your car and robbing you. That's what this really is. I mean, it's a very scary situation where they have to provide no proof, but you need to prove that you're innocent. Well, our founding fathers, with our rights, with the Constitution, actually have it the other way. And what they're doing right now is violating everything the founding fathers have put forth. I mean, think about what's happening here. I mean, we're in this situation where the government now is just taking whatever they want, searching whenever they want. And it's going to get worse as time goes on. Now, YouGov just did a poll, and they're saying that 1 in 3 Americans would support a military coup in America. Their latest research shows 70% of Americans believe the military officers generally want what is best for the country. When it comes to the congressmen, however, 71% of Americans believe that they want what is best for themselves. And I completely agree with this. I look at our government today, and I see that they're completely corrupt. I mean, their master is no longer the people. Their master are corporations. Their masters are central bankers. Their masters are foreign governments. And most of the government employees, I like to call them, they sold out. And they do nothing right now for the people whatsoever. Now, out in Ukraine, we see that the southeastern people are getting ready for elections, and Poroshenko is saying that he might have to put off the elections to a later date, and the southeastern people are saying, no, we want it now. They're even saying that, listen, we will have monitors in here to monitor what's going on. We'll even have Senator John McCain come down here and monitor the elections to make sure that it's all fair on the up and up, which I think is a really good plan, to let him go there and monitor it and say, yeah, it was all fair, it looks good, because then that would shut everything down in a complete instant. We see out in Europe the refugee crisis, it is getting worse by the day. We see that Germany, Austria, Czech Republic, Slovenia, and now the Netherlands, they're putting up border patrols right now. They're closing their borders. They're saying the conditions have been met to launch the new phase of the military operation, and they're going to be bringing in military soldiers to control the situation. And when we look at this, we know this is really a bad situation. And of course, all these countries, the central bankers, the governments, are going to be using this for their agendas. And it looks like at this time, this whole process that they're going through is allowing them to bring military onto the ground in the countries. Like it's their excuse of how and why they can do this. And it looks like this is prepping for the next stage, and that is World War III. I mean, here in the United States, we see they're going to be bringing in 10,000 Syrian refugees. They're en route to about 180 refugee centers here in the U.S., and there is a map. If you come to the X22Report.com site or on YouTube, I'll put it up there. You can see the map of the different centers in all the different states, and this is where the refugees are going to go to. And we know that all these refugees, they're being caused by the United States government, because their purpose right now is to remove and control all of these governments. The people in these countries do not want the United States government central bankers in there. So they have the Islamic State, which is the proxy army for the U.S. coalition forces in Israel, doing their number in Syria, causing the people to leave there. We have the people rising up in Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Yemen. We actually have war in Yemen, full speed ahead there, with Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, all in there with ground troops, with the U.S. orchestrating everything. And we see that a lot of these people can't take it anymore because things are completely falling apart in the Middle East. And as time goes on, it's going to get worse. This is the beginning stages of war, and we're seeing it unfold in front of us. The Turkish Stream pipeline is completely postponed because we see what is happening in Turkey now. Was this completely set up by the U.S. government to completely dismantle the agreement that Turkey had with Russia? It's starting to look like that, because Turkey still doesn't have a cabinet, doesn't have a government, and right now it looks like the Turkish Stream pipeline is off the table whatsoever. We see U.S. troops now, 160 American Army soldiers landing in Iraq. So we see more and more troops trickle in because they can't bring in too many at a time. But they're all being brought in there because we know what's going to happen sooner or later. They don't have the authorization for war right now, so they can't bring in a mass amount of troops, so they have to trickle them in and call them advisors. We see Cameron is still seeking consensus on bombing Syria, but he's having problems in the face of Corbyn, the opposition. So there's problems there. They're trying to get that done. And if they can't get it done, you know what happens. They create an event. We see the U.S. is using their secret CIA drone attacks disguised as hitting the Islamic State targets. But what are they really hitting? They're hitting the Syrian armed forces. They're hitting the infrastructure of Assad. So right now, we're going full force to remove Assad. And when I say we, I'm talking about the U.S. government central bankers. Most Americans are completely opposed of war, and the only way to get the Americans involved, or the people in the UK or the people in the European countries, is to create false flag events, to have people do things they normally wouldn't do. And it looks like we're coming down to this. We see the U.S. continually bullying many countries to cut off their airspace to Russia so they can't bring in humanitarian aid to Syria. We saw it in Greece. We saw it in Bulgaria. We see it now in Iraq. They're putting pressure on Iraq to say close your airspace, because right now Russian planes have been rerouted and they've been flying over Iran and Iraq, and now they want the airspace to Iraq closed so they can't bring in that humanitarian aid to Assad, to his people. They want the people to suffer. They don't want them to have food. They don't want them to have water. We've seen this before. Look at Ukraine. Look at Libya. Look at Yemen. It's all the same. And what's very interesting about all this, and Lavrov has been making hints, but he just came out and said it because we all know it's true at this point in time. We don't have to hide it anymore. And when I say we, I'm talking about the government officials around the world who are looking at this, saying, okay, you know something? Let's just call a spade right now. Russia now has formed that the U.S. knows the specific location points of the Islamic State, but did not give an order to strike on the positions of the Islamic State. He's saying Russia has satellite information. They know where the Islamic State is, and what they're seeing, which they've been seeing this for a very long time, that the United States government and the coalition forces, guess what, do not hit those targets. We know this to be true because guess what? The inner circle of Obama, they've been falsifying reports, making everyone believe that the United States was winning against the Islamic State, to keep the cover story that the Islamic State is a proxy army of the United States. It is completely falling apart, and I don't think they care at this point. I think they're going to carry out some type of an event that's going to be horrific at this time. Because when things fall apart and you push people into a corner, they come out with their claws, and this is what we're going to see. We see already, and we know, that the U.S. is trying to overthrow the Chinese government, overthrow the Russian government, Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina. And Russia's reporting that they've been hit by a company in San Francisco, over 50,000 requests per minute, to mess up their elections. And they reported this to the United States officials, saying there's a company there or someone there that's doing this. Now, who knows? Maybe they're bouncing it off that server, but they want them to investigate. Do you really think the U.S. is going to investigate this? Absolutely not. But the Pentagon right now is going to be building a cyber mission force that's worth about $1.9 billion. They're getting ready for a cyber war. And we know this is coming. I mean, from the Homeland Security and Security Management, a professor, Scott White, says that the potential for an adversary to disrupt, shut down the power systems, or worse, is real. It can be done. They have received about 1,131 cyber attacks on the Department of Energy computer systems between 2010 and 2014. And this was given by the reason why they know this is it was obtained by the Freedom of Information Act. And these are declassified materials. And of course, they let this out because they want everyone to know that, yes, the Department of Energy, the infrastructure, are all being bombarded with attacks. This will play into the fact that they will do this on their own to bring the system down. This is what we are seeing right now. Now, with the refugees coming into the United States, we already have a United States general saying, yes, in these refugees, there could be the Islamic State broken off into lone wolf groups, and they could be spread around the U.S., and they might pose a problem where they could create some type of an event. And we know this is about to happen. The same information is going out all over Europe right now, where they're saying, yes, the Islamic State could be intermixed with the refugees. Now, we know this is a cover story. We know they're using this to make everyone believe that the Islamic State is entering each one of these countries. They can't track them. They don't know where they go. They're broken off into lone wolf groups. Because of encryption, we can't track them that well. And this is why the FBI is out there trying to get through the encryption. They want all the companies to give the FBI all the keys of the methods so they have the front door access. But they need a warrant for this. They use all these type of agendas to get what they want. They try to scare everyone. And like I said, you need to protect yourselves. Everyone does. And you can do this by using Start Page. This will mask who's doing the actual search. You can use a proxy that will mask your location. You can write your own encryption. There are many different methods. You can use a product called Block Pocket that will basically hide and protect your signal from credit cards. If you have that new Real ID with your driver's license that has an RFID chip in it, that will block the signal. You can slip your iPad, your iPhone into these sleeves, and they will block the signal so you cannot be tracked. You also get a health benefit with your iPhone because it stops the radiation from the phone going into your brain. So there are many different benefits from that. Someone also emailed me, and I'll put it up on the X22Report.com. I have not tested it yet, but what they emailed me was something on MajorGeeks.com, and it's a PII crypt, which allows you to encrypt your messages. And they're saying that the government doesn't have the method or the key or anything like that, and you'll have to check it out yourself. I'll check it out and tell you what I think of it, but I will put the link on the X22Report.com site so you can take a look at it yourselves. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.